Alright, let's talk about the two movies from this week. One that came out in theaters, and then one that was released on Netflix Wednesday, I think. So let's just go ahead and start with Jurassic World. Dominion, this one is called, for some reason. And I know that I haven't been very ecstatic about these movies since the first Jurassic World came out in 2015. As I've mentioned many times before, a lot of people were not happy with what I had to say about that movie at the time because it wasn't quite cool enough to hate it yet. That had to come down the line. And then I think I remember at the time being relatively generous to Fallen Kingdom, I guess. But as far as wherever that bar is. But I have revisited it recently, knowing that this movie was coming, just to make sure any and all of the fucked up science was still in my head or whatever. Or any, whatever the continuity is at this point. But going into this one, the rest of that thought being that Fallen Kingdom is not that great, as it turns out. Surprising. So I don't want to say, I just don't want to act like I was going into this like not giving it any sort of chance or anything like that, because with the presence of Sam Neill and Laura Dern and Goldblum being here. Goldblum did have that useless cameo in Fallen Kingdom that bookended the movie, but apart from that, there was not that I thought that was gonna automatically make it better, but especially with the way we've seen a lot of these types of movies handled, where they bring back the old cast and it doesn't make a difference quality wise. It might give you a little bit of a feeling here and there just seeing these people together again, but that can only go so far. So and it is especially interesting that this is the first time they've all been together since the first movie, since Goldblum went his own way with The Lost World, and then 3 was mainly Sam Neill, but with a little tiny bit of Laura Dern. So there is something there to be reminded that it really hasn't been since the first movie since we saw all three of them together, which is nice, I guess. But at the same time, one of the things that stood out to me at the end of Fallen Kingdom when I was doing this recent revisit of it was Goldblum having a line towards the end where he says, how many times must the point be made? And I know it's kind of a cheap move to use a movie's own lines against it, but I mean, I saw a banner ad for it, and it said the conclusion of the saga or something like that, and it's obviously you never really believe that with these franchise movies, but I mean, if ever a movie was really showing you that it just doesn't know what to do with its own franchise anymore, I think this would be that. And like I said, not to go into it just automatically, not giving it a chance or anything like that, but do you ever just look at a movie's runtime before you go in, and just based on the runtime alone, you just kind of know it's gonna suck? Going into the third Jurassic World movie and seeing that it's 2 hours and 26 minutes. When I think all the others, with the exception of 3, have been at about the same time, which is just a little under 2 hours and 10 minutes. With the third movie only being an hour and a half. And I don't... And that's the thing, too. Going into this, I guess, about feeling like the franchise as a whole, I talked about the worlds. As far as the first 3, the first movie really has grown up. I watched the first movie at least twice a year at this point now. It just, somewhere about 5 years ago or so, it just really started growing on me. And now I feel like I watch it all the time. And the Lost World is fine. And it's something that gets a little better the more you see it, I guess. And some people like to kind of single out the not-so-great aspects of it and blow them up to make it seem like the rest of the movie is that quality, like the gymnastics thing, when the gymnastics thing is 10 seconds of that 2-hour-plus movie. And it's fine. And I still really love when they're, in San Diego and going through neighborhoods and shit. That's always great. And I don't know if it's the Jurassic World movies that are now, in retrospect, making 3 look better. Because when I was a kid, I liked 3, and then there was a point where I didn't really like 3, and now I feel like I kind of somewhat like 3 again. And it's like to an extent for what it is. But we haven't even been close to the quality of the first one. And I know that's an easy thing to say about franchises, but I mean in this series in particular, even if the Lost World is certainly not bad, it feels like we've not even come close. Like, and we're getting farther as these Jurassic World movies out. We're getting farther and farther and farther away from the quality of the first movie, more so than it might have even seemed possible. Um, like to think that there's a Jurassic movie with Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum in it, and the movie I'm recommending this week is an Adam Sandler movie that Netflix put out. Um, that's where we are now. So and it starts off just right away, just kind of telling you to go fuck yourself because when Fallen Kingdom ends, they're talking about dinosaurs and humans coexisting, and it's this whole big thing, and it's like imagine what this world will be, and it's like, oh yeah, that'll be very interesting. Like this movie was a piece of shit, but we're bringing a concept into this next one. It's like let's see what's going on with this next one. Well, there's a thing that Hollywood really, really loves to do a lot. They're obsessed with this. And that is coming up with concepts and then just not giving a shit about elaborating on that concept. So they're going to open up the movie and they're going to say, hey, look, we live in a world now where dinosaurs and humans coexist. Look at all this news footage of, dinosaurs and humans coexisting and dinosaurs and wild animals coexisting and all that. Just coexisting. They love using that term. Um, I feel like apart from that news footage and the very last little tiny montage we get at the very end, right before the end credits, there's like one brief scene of dinosaurs and humans coexisting. And it's and other than that, we're just in like labs and shit, or in like dark caves or whatever, and they just have no intention whatsoever of showing off this concept. And what's really funny is when I said that there's like a little montage at the end that talks about it, it's like I kind of feel like we just went full circle. And it's like they're saying, now we live in a world where dinosaurs and humans coexist. And it's like, we know. That's what this movie was supposed to be. But there's. I don't know. Okay, so I guess what it actually was Fallen Kingdom's ending is actually just a spoiler for the ending of this movie, I guess, because we don't really make any progress in that regard. We just keep hearing about it, and they keep talking. They say it. They say that there's a coexisting thing going on here, but as far as seeing it, that's just not really here. So, just whatever. If there is one thing that I was kind of into when the movie started, where I was actually like, okay, there's something positive. It was rare, so they really stuck out. That would be the whole thing going on with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, where it's like you watch the first Jurassic World, and it's like, oh, they were a couple once, and oh, but now they're apart, but now they're being reunited in this crisis, and oh, there's gonna be tension, and it's like, oh, do they love each other? Do they hate each other? Whatever. And then of course they get together, and then Fallen Kingdom comes along, and oh, they were together, but now they're apart, and oh, do they love each other? Do they hate each other? Is there going to be tension? And we're doing this all over again. When this one starts, they're actually fucking together this time, and they just stay that way. And it's like good, and it really shows just how completely meaningless that was to those other movies, and how much it was just dragging the runtime out. This little relationship and supposed tension that we just don't really give a shit about at all. And it's like, yeah, when people come to these movies, it's like, they want to see dinosaurs. They want to see dinosaurs, chasing after people or attacking each other or doing whatever. Just living their lives, even. It could be anything. Maybe throw in some science in there. That's like, getting that lesson from Mr. DNA from the first movie is one of the appealing things about that movie is the way they made it feel so real, through the way they described this fictional science. But now, now that we have more characters, because that's exactly what we needed, we have the girl Maisie, who they care for now, and she even calls Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard her parents. So they just care for her now. They just adopted her or whatever. And so now she's a moody teenager. So that's basically what the first half hour of the movie is. Is like, hey, they're together now, and oh, she's a moody teenager. Alright, and then we're introduced to more characters. And you'll notice something, and I guess you could argue, like, oh, we had Lex and Tim in the first movie, and they were kids, but they weren't that annoying, and even when they were, it was for the, like, comedic value, and it's like, even when they were being introduced as being annoying, it was still kind of pushing the story along a little bit, because when Tim is just kind of going off on his tangents to Alan about having read his books and stuff like that, it's setting him up as both an annoying character, but it's also kind of giving us a little bit more of Alan, because he's explaining, like, what those books were. And there was something there. So now we just have moody teenager being a moody teenager, and nothing is driving this. And it was taking me back to the scene in Fallen Kingdom where it's like, what was Maisie's background there? She wasn't saying bath properly. She wasn't saying bath in a proper accent. And it's like, that's what's making these movies over 2 hours now. This one, 2.5 hours. But that's not just one problem that has sprouted from these Jurassic World movies that the park movies didn't really have. While we're in this big introduction of characters that we're just not going to care about and are really just dead ends in this movie. It's like dead ends that we get rid of like halfway through the movie because they're that pointless. Is villains. This one's like villains galore. Like, they introduce one guy that's kind of a villain, then they introduce this woman that comes off as a villain, and then we have a whole other villain going on that takes us to like the second half of the movie where Dodgson has returned. Not quite returned, but he's a little returned. The guy, remember, we got Dodgson here, see Nobody Cares. That guy is back now, and he's Campbell Scott now. And I had to look up why that was, because it's like, well, if you're bringing everybody back, why not bring back the guy that actually played Dodgson? Yeah, so I Googled that guy, and if you Google him too, you will see why he's not played by that guy anymore. He's still alive, kind of unfortunately, it sounds like, but yeah, so he's Campbell Scott now, so we can run with that. And we get some other returning characters here, like those annoying people that were just tagging along in Fallen Kingdom are here. That really, really awful actress, and whatever that other guy's name was, and yeah, who gives a shit? And Omar Sy kind of comes back in from the first Jurassic World, and BD Wong is still hanging out here. Like, kind of being important, but also just here. But where was I even going with this? Yeah, the villains. Okay, so as far as the villains go, does it feel kind of overkill when villains come in? Because you look at let's go to the first movie, where you have characters that are not villains by any means, but that were kind of made to not really like very much. I guess Gennaro would be that guy in the first movie, but I mean, just because he's a lawyer and he's kind of snippy with the kids. But then they do away with him quickly. He wasn't a terrible guy, but it's like, yeah, he was gonna get eaten. We were counting on that. And then the second movie comes along, and we have, Arliss Howard and Pete Postlethwaite. And Pete Postlethwaite had his little turnaround. Too little too late, but still had a bit of a turnaround. With Arliss Howard kind of being our villain. But once again, just a guy that was doing what he thought he had to do, but no, we were waiting to see him eaten as well. And then 3 had Alessandro Nivola doing the thing where he was going to take the raptor eggs. But then 3, in a rare mature move from 3, Alan even says, like, he literally says he's not really a villain. He's just a young guy with his ambitions in the wrong place. That's why he took the raptor eggs. And it's fine. He got attacked and he didn't even die. He got to have that kind of turnaround. Those were, I guess, what you could call the antagonists that were not dinosaurs in the first 3 movies. But now we've got D'Onofrio in the first Jurassic World, doing what he can to bring something to the movie, but a bit of a cartoonish villain compared to the others. Then we get Rafe Spall in the second movie, who's this extremely cartoonish villain, and then the third one, by the time we get to this one, every time a villain's introduced, we get, like, doomy music that introduces them, and it's... and it's a couple of these villains, it wasn't really clear to me what their goals were. By the time we get to the Dawson stuff, I guess kind of, we start going into this locust thing that feels like it barely has anything to do with the whole dinosaur thing. I don't know. So that's, you can just see the pathway where these movies are just losing their way further and further, and we're getting further and further away from what made these movies work to begin with. It's to the point that it's like the goal. It's like the goal of the writers and the goal of the studio to get us as far away from the thing we loved as we were. But they're like, I don't want to overuse this term, but I mean, it almost feels like we're being a little gaslit by them bringing in the main three, despite taking us as far away from what was so great about what we used to love as much as possible. Still love, but what this used to be. And so now they bring in, Sam Neill and Laura Dern, and they have, like, a little bit of the old score playing in the background. And it doesn't feel magical. Like, it's as not great as The Secrets of Dumbledore was. I said that... It's always fucking Williams, too. I had said that regardless of how bad the movie gets, there's something about seeing a Hogwarts and a Harry Potter movie with the Williams score playing. That something still happens inside me when I see that and hear it. But Sam Neill and Laura Dern walk into this movie, and you hear little musical cues that you recognize, and I just got fucking nothing for this. You can hear the studio and the writers and the director and everybody asking two things very aggressively. They're asking us, please like us. Please like something about this movie. Look, we brought this stuff that you liked before. Here it is again. Will you please like us a little bit? And then they're looking at Sam Neill and Laura Dern, and they're asking them aggressively, please give us some kind of integrity. Please, we are desperate at this point. Have you seen what these movies have become? We are desperate. Please give us something that gives us just a little bit of dignity, please. And it's not really here. It's not working. I don't feel jack shit. That's and speaking of not feeling jack shit. Another thing that's driving me crazy about these Jurassic World movies is this connection we're supposed to feel towards Blue. I don't get that, and I bring that up because this movie is particularly reliant on it. The Fallen Kingdom was very reliant on it as well. It drove Pratt's whole thing of getting into the plot. But it's like, when we started off with those raptors in Jurassic World, you couldn't tell that they called her Blue and she had like a blue streak. You couldn't tell those fuckers apart. And there were like 5 of them, and they all had different names, and they like died one by one. And I think we were supposed to feel something for that. And then it was like, oh, and here's Blue, the last one left. That's the only reason I know it's Blue, because that's the only name they're saying, and it's the only one alive. And now we've been supposed to feel something for, and there's so much CGI in these last 3, you almost would think that they abandoned the animatronics, but the animatronics are still being used, they're still in there, but it's getting fewer and fewer and farther between, but I don't ever remember seeing Blue as an animatronic, that I remember. I haven't seen these near as many, I've seen these like maybe once or twice each, compared to the others. But I don't ever remember Blue looking like she was physically there. So, that's the point I'm getting at. But that's the thing is, even the animatronic work, by the time we get to this one, there's some stuff that does look really good. And there was some stuff in the last 2 that looked really good. But there's a couple of animatronics in this one, and I don't want to seem ungrateful for the animatronics. I'm glad that they're here, and I'm glad that they're still trying to go that route a little bit. But there's like one particular animatronic in this that gets a close-up, and they like interact with it for a little while, and it's not like I said, I'm grateful for it being an animatronic, but I feel like you could almost hear its gears turning. It just looks so weirdly fake. Like almost even faker than if they had just gone CGI. But and that's not to undermine, some of the CGI does look good, but the more you move towards that and farther away from the animatronics, the cheaper everything starts to feel. I really, really hate that overhead shot of the park in the first Jurassic World, where they had the nerve to play the original theme over it, and it's like, just look at all this fucking anime. Just look into the soul of this green screen. it's, and it's, so it just leaves me with a bad feeling. And, like, the more we go on, the more they try to get us to say, hey, we know that you loved, the first movie and all the stuff that was going on in that. So if we just bring some of that over here, will you love our green screen bullshit, please? Because we're not really trying anymore. I mean, have you seen the script for this thing? We're not trying anymore, but we really would like to make some money because we want to make, like, more movies. Because, as you know, the director, Colin Trevor, who for some reason got this job again, despite, I don't know, wasn't there, like, problems with him in the studio or something, to where, like, he almost, I don't know, he got thrown off of something, and he made that, wasn't he the one that made, like, the Book of Henry? And it's like, how is he still making shit? He's one of those people that Hollywood just will not let go of, and you will never understand why. It's like we had that conversation about Simon Kinberg, like, earlier this year. Just those guys. Those guys that are just always going to be around and all they make is shit. Like, where does, like, what are they, like, what, I don't know. Yeah, he made that Aubrey Plaza movie once in 2012, and now he's made 2 Jurassic Worlds, and they're getting worse as they go. And I don't know I don't know. It's really, really late at night, and and I have the Jurassic World movies on the brain. You're gonna have to forgive me if this is all over the fucking place. So, where are we even now? I guess, okay, I didn't mention Goldblum really yet. Yeah, they bring him in also, and it is nice to see him walk in, and he looks like Malcolm, and he acts like Malcolm. He's also obviously very much acting like Goldblum, but he's much more Malcolm now than he was in Fallen Kingdom. Mind you, Fallen Kingdom, he was in a particular setting, like a professional setting, but it just kind of felt like a random Goldblum cameo. It didn't feel like Malcolm or anything. So to see him here actually Malcolming around, I guess you could say, was nice. Even if he does have those extra doses of Goldblum that he can't help doing now everywhere. But whatever, it's fine. They are the most tolerable part of this movie, which is the most you could expect out of them. So and they're in it more than I thought they would be. There is that. Like, I was expecting just throwaway cameos again. But they're here, and they do stuff, I guess, but they also kind of are pushing us in a different plot entirely. Because, like I was saying, they're doing this locust thing now, that seems distanced from the dinosaur thing. It felt like there were 2 or 3 different movies going on here at once, and, like, the projector was just, like, suddenly a TV that was looking for a channel to stay on. And it's like, and every time we see Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard stuff, it feels like a Jurassic World movie. And when we see the other 3, it doesn't feel like a Jurassic Park movie anymore, but it feels like a different movie than whatever Pratt and Howard are in. And so, and it all feels really, so obviously eventually they're all going to come together, and it's supposed to be this really big moment where the world movies and the park movies are colliding in this big way, and it is even more underwhelming than you could possibly guess. Because obviously the characters aren't gonna, like, really, like, the old 3 don't know who these people are, and they only seem to kind of know who they are. It's like, oh yeah, you're famous, or something. Or, Alan says something about knowing that Owen trains raptors. That's the thrilling conversation that they have. And I'm not really much into the fan theory thing, but there was one thing that honestly just makes so much sense. It's almost infuriating they didn't even go with it. Especially because this meeting of the world actors and the park actors coming together. I remember hearing a theory a while back. I think it was when the first Jurassic World came out. People were theorizing that Owen, the Chris Pratt character, was the kid at the beginning of the first movie that Alan scares with the claw. And I actually even looked into it. I looked up that actor, and the actor that played that kid is like 1 year older or younger than Chris Pratt. So it would have made all the sense. But no, they didn't go that route. It was just like, oh hey, I know you're Alan Grant, and he says I know you because you train raptors. That's it. That's all there is. And then they pretty much go their separate ways again from the climax. So it's, I don't know. It's like every possible opportunity they saw. They were like I was saying at the beginning. It was like they were intentionally fucking this up. Like any time any opportunity would rise, they were like, we have to do this in the most underwhelming way possible. Not necessarily bad, just make the audience feel nothing at all. Let's do that. Let's see how that works out for us. Because I have a feeling in my mind. I have a feeling they're going to sense our desperation when we're playing the old theme and we bring the old actors back. So why don't we just dive into this? Why don't we make a new objective? How about instead of making all these a really big, doing our best to make these a really big deal, let's do our best to make them just flatline. let's see if we can pull it off, and let's see how much money we can make in the process. Let's do that, because these movies are just fucking products anymore. Jurassic World was one of the biggest examples of, and the fact that it was trying to disguise itself as being meta is just insulting. You are just nothing more than something made to sell shit. You are not a movie anymore. So, you're not even a franchise anymore. This, when Jurassic Park 3 feels dignified, like a dignified conclusion in comparison to what this trilogy is. I mean, people go after Star Wars all the fucking time about being a sequel trilogy that just has all the fucking wrong ideas. No. Yeah, Rise of Skywalker's a piece of shit, sure, but you want to talk about the whole thing failing? All three movies all in a row, failing as miserable as they possibly could. This is getting a little overlooked, I think. Like I said, because there's people that like these. And I don't want to shit on those people, because that's not... I just don't want to do that. I don't want to shit on people for liking things. I really, really don't. I know it might sound like that sometimes, but honest to God, it's the last thing I want to do. Just sometimes it can be mind-boggling that people see shit like this, and they're like, I'm good, but I'm entertained by this. I like this. Something that I can't wrap my head around, so maybe that's on me, I guess. If I had to look for things in this to like really, really hard, the chase scene in the middle. The chase scene in the middle is not that bad. There's kind of a thrill factor to it. I don't really remember what was driving it, because because we get so involved in this locust thing after a while that it's like it doesn't, the whole chase didn't really feel like it was nothing dinosaur related in this movie. It feels driven by anything. It feels like, well, we've still got Jurassic Untitled, and that's what people are here for, but it's almost like they found some other script laying around that was unrelated, and they were like, we need to get this movie out. We need more money, so just throw this shit together. Just throw something together. I don't even care anymore. I don't think the director was watching. I don't think the studio was watching. I think this movie just somehow manifested itself by accident. That's the only way a movie can come out like this. I don't... Oh, yeah, and one more thing. I was talking about we're getting Maisie the moody teenager. Well, let me tell you something else about this 2 hour and 26-minute movie. Remember the whole clone thing, where it's like she was a clone of James Cromwell's daughter or something? Was that it? I think so. Who fucking cares? So, if that wasn't enough for you, we're gonna get more backstory on the whole cloning Maisie thing. I can't express this enough. who the fuck cares about how Maisie came to be? It's a dinosaur movie. Why are we talking about cloning and weird births and locusts? I mean, there are franchises that have lost sight of themselves before. But what is this even about anymore? I don't know. That's because I don't care. That's the only way you can leave this with your sanity, is just stop caring about it. And I don't mean stop caring and just enjoy what's on the screen. Not that kind of thing. I mean stop caring. Stop caring, and completely. Like, don't give the movie the benefit of the doubt that that's what you need to do to enjoy it, because there's not really anything here at all. Just let the movie go its way, and you go your own way. That's what I would recommend. But, you know, it's a movie with Jurassic in the title, and you threw the three main people in there, and you put Chris Pratt's stupid face out there. People are gonna show up, because that's what's gonna happen. And then we'll have to deal with another one of these, in one way or another. And it'll just continue to lose its way again. So, probably further and further away until maybe there's a chance it'll have like a Bumblebee situation where it's like, this isn't really in line with this, like it's kind of this story, but it's not really this story, but we're just going to do something else entirely, but it's still kind of this, but it'll be made by competent people. Maybe, possibly. That's a reach at this point. But I don't know. And it's when you're running out of ideas of what to do with dinosaurs, it's time to stop. It's time to stop your dinosaur franchise if you don't give a fuck about your dinosaurs anymore. You care about cloning and fucking locusts and moody teenagers and how cartoony your villains can be, your human villains can be. What are you doing anymore? This was not made by people that appreciate the original. I won't give too much credit to like Jurassic Park 3 or, you know, parts of The Lost World. We'll just talk about the first movie. This was not made by people that appreciate the first movie. And if the people that made this are going to tell you they appreciate the first movie, they do not know how to express appreciation. They do not know how to express love or respect or anything like that if they're going to try to claim that they love the first movie and then they send this out to you. No. Fuck them. So, let's go on over to Netflix to save the day. This is how low the bar is. Let's talk about Hustle, the new Adam Sandler movie that Netflix has put out, which usually is a terrifying sound, a terrifying group of words, but they actually put together something nicely here. It's a little alarming at first because it does start with the Happy Madison logo, which is usually concerning. But yeah, going into it, if you know that it's a basketball movie and it's taking itself seriously, like it's got, you know, funny moments in it, but I would struggle to call it a comedy. It's kind of not really. It's just kind of a sports movie in general, and when you know how passionate Adam Sandler is about basketball in real life, it's you probably get the feeling there's going to be something worthwhile in this movie. Because you always talk about, when you see his comedies and you're like, oh, he's just hanging out with his friends, nobody gave a shit when they were writing that or whatever. This was made by people that give a shit. Like I said, clearly by people that are not just, you know, passionate about basketball, but a few players as well. Like LeBron's credited as a producer. And I learned, I am not a sports fan whatsoever. Don't really know much of anything about basketball players that aren't household names. So I didn't learn till the very end when they show the people with their name that there's a lot of basketball players in this as well. So there's that. At the start, not to get your mind in the wrong place about how much quality we have here, but I will say some of the opening scenes reminded me fondly of Moneyball a little bit, just with basketball as opposed to baseball. But and we get an introduction with Robert Duvall being the team owner and Ben Foster being his kind of overzealous kid that really wants to take over and is butting heads with Sandler. And Sandler's the scout that's looking for players, and they're trying to uh, add on to the 76ers in a positive way. Um, that's a lot of really good names. That's a good setup, and it's all very like from the start. It feels like the movie's very well made, and to bring in all these quality actors is it's all positivity. Granted, I was very happy to see Duvall because Duvall's like 91 now, and it's so great to see him still working and still at. He's got that thing that he's going to be a lead. He's supposed to be the lead character in at some point. Um, and then the whole plot is set off by his death that happens in the first 3 minutes of the movie. So, but even so, there is definitely something here, and like I said, the fact that it doesn't feel like a comedy, and I think it says dramedy in the genre listed. But like I said, it really just kind of feels like a sports movie. And of course, sports movies are going to come with the usual cliches. But what's really nicely done about this movie is that there's definitely cliches that they hang on to and cliches that really drive the plot. But there's also cliches that they didn't bother with. And the great balance that they found here was they seem to have pushed out all the shitty cliches and they kept the cliches that people love in sports movies. Like the whole reason people watch sports movies. Where it's like, if these cliches weren't in a sports movie, it wouldn't feel like a sports movie, and it wouldn't have that same feeling to take away from it, that good feeling to take away from it. So it's like when it knew what to do and what not to do in regarding sports movie cliches, felt like where I was saying, Jurassic World that we just talked about does not feel like it was made by people that love Jurassic Park. This very much feels like it was made by people that not only love the sport in general, but sports movies also, and know what makes a sports movie good, and one maybe not so good, or one a little too cliche. Like, one of the things that stands out is his wife is Queen Latifah, and they have a daughter. And it's brought up, like, he says something about, like, I haven't been to my daughter's birthday party like 9 years in a row or something. But they never go into the whole family neglect thing. I was a little disappointed with how underutilized Queen Latifah was, because she is just kind of playing the wife part, and most of her scenes take place just her, like hanging around the house. But the fact that they didn't go the route of it being a whole conflict that his family feels neglected, because they, if anything, they partake as much as they can, especially his daughter. Who comes into play where she's like this, film school hopeful, so he utilizes her to like make tapes as far as showing off the player that he has found. And yeah, the whole thing between him and this player also, and the whole backstory that this player has, that he finds, who to my understanding is also an actual player, which I was wondering about that. It's like, that has to be an actual basketball player. And of course it is. I apologize that I can't remember like any of the actual athletes' names, but it's, I think it says something, because usually you would think that athletes would make very poor actors, stuff like Kevin Garnett and Uncut Gems notwithstanding. But the fact that I didn't really know for sure until the end that a lot of these basketball players were actual basketball players and not necessarily actors, I think says something about how well they handled this. So there's definitely that. And yeah, his dynamic with this player that he discovers as they go on is something where, like I said, it's kind of the perfect balance of, there's like, comedy gags in there, but nothing like too over the top or anything like that. Nothing like you would, like a gag you would expect in like a Sandler full-on comedy. Like that, like, as far as anything being like particularly crass, I guess you could say, which is what you would expect out of a Sandler comedy, would be there is a very funny joke involving him using his phone as a translator. That kind of goes in that direction a little bit, but nothing goes too over the top or anything like that. It never loses its way as far as tone or where it's going, and the same thing can absolutely be said about Sandler's performance as well, because it's very for him playing this kind of part and being as passionate about basketball in real life as he is, and the fact that you see, like, even though he's a scout, he's kind of taking on a coach-like role in a lot of his scenes and within his performance. Um, you think about, some of the really over the top coach performances we've seen over time, and so I found it very impressive that Sandler didn't seem to be going that route at all. Like, his performance throughout it, despite taking on a coach like role, is very downplayed a lot of the time. He has one really great speech where he talks about the difference between, like, loving the game and being obsessed with the game, and it's something that could have been done in this really big theatrical way. And it's really downplayed, but you can still feel it in it. Like I said, I think that's where Sandler's, like, real life passion for the sport is coming through, and really really helps his performance. Because anytime he talks about the game and his love for the game, or in this case obsession with the game, it feels very real without having to be theatrical and over the top, which was really nice and really unexpected. And it's like I can see where people get infuriated when they see a shitty Sandler comedy or a shitty Sandler movie or whatever, because this is the stuff that Sandler's capable of seemingly all the time. Like, we were talking before about how it seems like his dramatic roles are, like, really far apart, but it's like Uncut Gems feels like it just happened. It's been like 3.5 years already, 2.5, 3.5, 2019 to now, but it still feels very fresh. And then to bring out this performance also, and it's like Sandler could do this all the time. Like, he really could. He's very capable of it, and this is like such a controlled performance from him. It's really crazy. Um, when he can just show seemingly effortlessly what he's capable of. This showcases that really well. And, like, his dynamic with everybody, whether it be, the scenes he has here coaching this guy, and then the scenes he has with Queen Latifah, the rivalry he has with Ben Foster playing this very infuriating character. It's all of it, just all of it rings true. The one, like, emotional scene he has with Duvall at the beginning is also just really well done. And it's like it's like he can have these moments with any character, and all these characters he has different relationships with. And there's just it's, you have to really, really look for a false note to find it. And it's, yeah, and like I said, and the way it doesn't dwell on things. I guess the only way you could say that is there are two montages in the middle that feel like one very, very long montage, that does start to get a little repetitive, but at the same time, it's like, what's a sports movie without a montage? And it's like, it's probably too long of a montage, or montages that are a little too long, but I mean, it's a sports movie. How can you complain about that? I think especially if you love just sort of seeing the sport, that's going to be, the montages might even be a high point for you. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of what this movie is. Like I said, if you've seen, a basketball movie or a sports movie in general, I mean, you're gonna feel like you've seen this before. But I mean, like I said, isn't that what keeps bringing us back to sports movies? Is those getting those same feelings, those triumphant feelings of just seeing somebody train or accomplish some sort of goal, to get to the point in the status in the game that they want to be, or they're striving for. And to see the people around them succeed in the process, within their own goals and their own reach. It's like, that's why we do these. So yeah, so as far as, if you're not really into sport, like I said, if you're like me and there's some stuff about, like, what it is he has to do to get to a certain point doesn't quite, like, I don't know what some of these things are, but, and not knowing what, a lot of the faces are, I don't think it's going to matter too much. Even, like, if you just like sports movies in general, I still think you'll be fine. But yeah, I didn't really feel like that was having too much of an impact on how I felt about it, not being a sports person at all. So I'm fine with that. So yeah, so like I was saying, weirdly enough, an Adam Sandler movie from Netflix is what I am recommending this week. Weirdly enough, so next week is what, Lightyear, and I think a lot of streaming things. So we'll look into all that, and then we've got I'm trying to put this together this other review thing where it's like just kind of a quick rundown of some stuff that I overlooked in the past few months, and then we've got another Q&A thing. We've got our Mr. Ripley movie club thing, and then I guess we'll go from there until that weekend, and then so on. So through this summer, as the bigger stuff is going to start coming out. So until whatever the next thing is, I think that's it.